Welcome to the GinGee GoodEarth program. I welcome you today, and we're doing a reading from the book called The Vikings, written by Elizabeth Janeway. And I wanted to start off with a wonderful, great thought of the day. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. Eleanor Roosevelt. And at a time right now with the global pandemic putting 188 countries under lockdown, which is ginormous statistics, where we have to protect ourselves through proper hygiene, social distancing, taking a good look at our food quality and how we handle our food and preparation. And again, with daily prayer to avoid the sickness that can put you into harm's way, we must do everything we can to prevent ourselves being inflicted with such a disease. So again, without further ado, I want to talk about the Norwegian, Finland, and Sweden folk costume and dress. And I am sewing reproductions of this beautiful dress, and I have it hanging up here, and so I'll zoom in on it, and I'll be making these to bring back with me or to ship to the Scandinavian countries so they can enjoy their traditional culture, way of life. I sew for the Pittsburgh Victorian Gibson girls, and I direct the Pittsburgh Victorian Gibson girls in vintage musical theatrical theater. And I have a great extensive library on Victoriana. I've been collecting since 1992, so I have quite a collection of Victoriana. And I'm just adjusting the camera. I want to make sure I get everything in the camera. But without further ado, this is part 2. There's going to be 8 parts to this book reading, and when I have to get this camera adjusted. That's why, if anyone can help me with equipment or technology details on how to do a better job with the equipment, and I have to do a few things. Okay, we have to put him here. I love history, and I like reading about history. I like participating in historical fun, adventure. It's all about the history in my life, and I read a lot about Victorian history. In fact, I have lectures on the wedding and courtship of Victorian traditions. I have a program called Romance of the Rose. I have history presentations on Queen Victoria, Nellie Bly, and Evelyn Nesbit. I also talk about the importance of voting and women suffragists, the notable notorious men Charles Dana Gibson, Andrew Carnegie, Charles Martin Hall, the founder of Alcoa Aluminum. And I also teach Victorian ballroom dancing. And today I have a special program where you can see the collection of china ware, the plates, the designs. I have painted some of these plates because I enjoy porcelain painting. And I really encourage you to learn how to paint flowers on porcelain. So that gives a little bit more information, but my recommendation is to review all 15 videos since I just started learning how to work with YouTube video programming, and I only have 15 videos, so you'll learn a lot more about my objectives, my mission to teach, amuse, and educate on my favorite topics that I know about, which is Victorian and beekeeping and first American history. Also, I have programs on other nations, but today we're featuring the Scandinavian countries, and I'm going to go ahead and provide a second reading on the book The Vikings. And here we begin. There's a bisque doll in that picture. Isn't that pretty? And here's a Akita. So I have to get that off the screen. But we had a family dog that was a very well-behaved, trained, happy Akita. And now we have a bunny rabbit on the screen. So without further ado, and this was folk art from the Scandinavian countries, that rabbit. And anything you see on the videos, if you need to paint or draw a flower from one of the plates that is illustrated, or, you know, recreate that wonderful folk art bunny rabbit, don't hesitate not to. This is why I'm sharing my antiques, my knowledge, so that you can also teach the same subjects that I do. And you could probably do a better job. I'm a grandmother. But without further ado, the Vikings. And again, the Vikings is based on the history and the story of how Eric the Red and his son Leif sailed to the west and discovered Greenland and the continent of North America, and it is a true story. So we left off when Eric, the father of Leif, arrived with a group of military men coming home from a skirmished event. "And you," said Eric, "have you had adventures this long week? What have I been away? Have you behaved as the eldest son should? How is the baby?" "Yes, oh yes," Leif replied. "The baby's fine, and Brandon, my friend, and I are making a sword. It's to be called Trufing when it's done, and you'll carve the name on it, won't you, Father?" "And oh, Father, what?" said Eric. He reined in his horse up at the gateway. "Greetings to this house," he called loudly to the housefolk who stood waiting for him. "May Brandon have a sword too?" Leif begged. "Please, Father, for he was freeborn in Ireland, you know. Please, we want to practice sword fighting together." "Brendan," said Eric, and his eyes sought out the dark-haired boy who stood behind the gate. "Yes," he said slowly and not smiling, "Brendan shall have a sword." Leif bounced joyously, but Eric's eyes moved on to his wife, and when they met hers, he said, "Well, we shall all need swords, I think, for I am this day proclaimed an outlaw." Outlawed or not, tired men who have ridden hard all day must eat and drink. Inside the big room of the main farmhouse, fires were built on the stone floor for cooking, and a keg of ale was tapped. But the bustle of preparation for the meal was subdued this evening, and Thorochild, Leif's mother, moved about her work in a silence that no one dared to break. On the carved high seat, Eric sat leaning his elbow on his knee and staring before him, unblinking, into the fire. His red hair glinted in the light, and the heavy gold ring on his finger shone in the dancing flames. Besides him stood Leif, a very quiet Leif, whose heart was heavy with wondering what all this could mean, but he did not dare to ask his father. At Eric's feet, the brown dog, Helga, slept, but in his sleep he growled once or twice and moved his feet as if he were chasing something. What a sight! Eric looked down at him and laughed. And Helga woke up, raised his head, and blinked as if he were ashamed of himself. "Dreaming of rabbits, Helga?" asked Eric. "In this country there are better things to hunt than rabbits." "They hunt men sometimes, Helga. Men! But I never thought I would be one of the hunted. Still, I don't think it will be easy to catch me." "They'll never catch you, Father," Leif burst out, "not while I live." "Leif," Eric turned around, "I didn't know you were there. No, they won't catch me, son. And I thank you for your brave words. But brave words should come from a strong man, and you won't grow strong without supper. Go get a plate from your mother now, and then ask Bajanari to tell you his stories of his adventures, for he listened very carefully to get them straight for you, and be sure to thank him." "Yes, Father." Eric sat leaning his elbow on his knee. Here's an illustration of Eric and his son Leif, and the dog's on the bottom, and that's Helga. "Yes, Father," but Leif went slowly to where Bajanari sat, and he knew he wanted to ask the young man for a story different from the Viking adventures. "How did this come about?" he said, sitting down on the bench next to Bajanari. Bajanari glanced at him quickly. "I must know," said Leif angrily. "I'm not a baby." "No," Bajanari agreed. "Very well, I'll tell you. Do you remember that early this spring a landslide crushed down on a house on the other side of the hills?" "Of course I do. And the owner, Vlath, said that our thralls had done it, but they were just in the hills looking for pasture land for the sheep, and he and his cousin Ulf killed our men." "Yes," said Bajanari, And then Eric called us out to revenge this deed, and Ulf was killed in the fight. And he deserved it, Leif explained haughtily. Murdering unarmed thralls? Yes, Bajinari agreed. So I think, and so thought your father. But Elf was a free man, and there is penalty for killing a free man. Ulf's relations brought their case before the court, and they won. But that's not fair. Fair or not, it happened 2 days ago, Leif and Bajinari. Your father is banished from Trondheim. Leif stared about the fire-lit hall, where shields and weapons gleamed along the walls. He imagined how it would seem standing empty in days to come, unlit by fires through the long, dark winter nights, while the wind ploughed the snow on the roof, and only a driven fox or two might creep in for shelter. He blinked to hold back the tears that were unbecoming a strong man. What will my father do? He whispered. Ah, if I knew all that was in Eric's head, said Bajinari. I know more than I do now. But what will you do? Leif asked. Oh, said Bajinari simply, I'll follow Eric. He glanced at the boy beside him. Now eat your supper, he said. Then listen to a news story that I heard one evening when the court session was over from a far-traveled man named Gunnar Eisenarson. Go on, eat, and when you're through, you shall have your dagger. So it looks like they're going to have to protect themselves through a quandary of problem. And again, this happened 1,000 years ago. And so as survival for this world of people, they had to have swords and daggers for protection. And that's why this is of a topic. So we get back to the story. Go on, eat. When you're through, you shall have your dagger. So Leif ate his supper. When he was finished, Bajinari drew from his belt a short dagger in a strong leather sheath. Leif pulled it out, and his eyes sparkled. The hilt was ornamental with gold, and fine forging of the blade told of its strength and trueness. Oh, Bajinari, he cried, it's beautiful. Thank you. That's all right, said Bajinari, looking a little embarrassed. There,